As a small business owner, my favorite thing about posting a job on LinkedIn is that when I hit post, I clock out and LinkedIn clocks in.
LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, get qualified candidates, and manage them all in one place. Plus, LinkedIn extends the reach of your job post by allowing you to share it with your network. And hiring managers that add a hiring frame to their LinkedIn profiles receive 2 times more qualified applicants. Go to linkedin.com/achieve to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
In light of the tragic events that happened with the American Airlines crash in DC and the Philadelphia airline crash, we thought that this episode would be super helpful for you to hear. And even though the focus is really lighthearted, we have some very actionable tips that you could take right now if you have friends and family struggling with grief.
I was 40, had recently gotten remarried. First marriage had kind of ended in flames. Second marriage was proof that amazing humans do exist and you can be treated very well. And all signs were pointing towards, sunshine.
Yeah.
And we were on the way back from the trip and we had driven separately. And I had a flat tire. And so he's getting into the trunk trying to get the spare tire. And a driver who had meth and alcohol in his system. It was daylight. Hazard lights were on. He did not brake. Nothing, just crashed right into the back of Hugo's car and trapped him in between his car and my car.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Crone, here with the delightful and dancing Bree Tucker.
Why, hello, everybody. How are you today?
I'm looking for more alliterations that I could use with Bree's name, and I found one. This morning, Bree. Brunch with Bree. I mean, It's amazing. Brunch with Bree. It's a good one.
You know what? We should make that a thing at all of our retreats. Brunch with Bree and Joe with Joe.
Brunch with Bree and Joe with Joe. Exactly. Well, in today's podcast, we are going to tackle a topic that's usually feels a little awkward, but it doesn't have to be that way. In the next 30 minutes, our guest is going to help you figure out why it's so awkward to approach a friend who is in the grieving process and how to make it less awkward. Our guest is Krista St-Germain. She's a master certified life coach, post-traumatic growth and grief expert, widow, mom, and host of the Widowed Mom podcast. When her husband was killed by a drunk driver in 2016, Krista's life was completely and unexpectedly flipped upside down. After therapy helped her uncurl from the fetal position, Krista discovered life coaching, post-traumatic growth, and learned the tools she needed to move forward and create a future she could get excited about. Now she coaches and teaches other widows so they can love life again too. Krista's been featured online and in print in Psychology Today, Psych Central, Bustle, Charlotte Parent, Medium, and Parents Magazine, and on select podcasts such as Grief to Growth, Seek the Joy, Life Check Yourself, and now No Guilt Mom. So with that, let's get on with the show.
You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast.
Welcome, Krista, to the podcast. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm always excited when anybody wants to talk about grief.
I know,
Excited to talk about grief.
Yes. It's that topic where we're like, okay, I know that we all have this. It's that taboo thing that happens in life and everybody needs to talk about it, but you just don't want to.
Krista, usually I ask where you're joining us from. Where do you live?
Yeah, I live in Wichita, Kansas. Smack in the middle of the
Oh,
country.
here we go. Bree has it for you, Krista.
I grew up somewhere near there. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri.
Hey.
Northland.
Uh-huh.
But
Chiefs
I actually have quite a few sorority sisters that live in Wichita now.
Oh, fun. What sorority?
Yeah. Alpha Gamma Delta. Go Squirrels.
Very nice. Delta Gamma. I can tell you, I was so grateful for mine when my husband died. Holy cow. You want to talk about, but they rallied around me hard. And that was when I was 40.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was even a little spring chicken out of college.
See, that's awesome to have that connection and have that support. Can you share about your story and how you got into the line of work you do now?
Yeah, definitely not part of the 5 or 10 year plan.
No.
Never intended to do grief work at all. But I was 40. I had recently gotten remarried. first marriage had kind of ended in flames. We had 2 beautiful children out of the marriage, but second marriage was proof that like amazing humans do exist and you can be treated very well. And life felt like it was like all signs were pointing towards, sunshine.
Yeah.
And we had taken a trip and we were on the way back from that trip and we had driven separately. And I had a flat tire and I pulled over on the side of the highway. We were very close to being home. And he didn't want to call AAA. He was like, baby, just let me change the tire. We'll get home faster. I just want to get home. And so he's in between his car and my car, getting into the trunk, trying to get the spare tire. And I'm standing on the side of the road, texting my daughter, who was 12 at the time, to tell her we would be late. And a driver who we later found out had meth in his system and alcohol in his system. It was daylight. It was 5:30 on a Sunday. Hazard lights were on. He did not see us, did not brake, nothing, just crashed right into the back of Hugo's car and trapped him in between his car and my car. Yeah, it went from fairy tale moment in life to whoosh, like rug pulled right out from under me. And so, we got him to the hospital, but he died within, 24 hours. And while I did have an amazing therapist who had helped me through that divorce, I loved her. What I really quickly found out is that I didn't really know much about grief. And what I thought I knew about grief was not really very helpful.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, through a whole bunch of doing my own work and then discovering life coaching. And I just decided I want people to have an easier experience of grief. And this work is really meaningful to me. And so that's what I do now is I, quit my corporate job. My husband and I used to work together, quit that job, and then became a coach. And that's what I've been doing since 2018.
Wow. What do you see people usually get wrong about grief?
Well, first of all, the only grief theory people seem to know about is the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
Right? Like, have you ever heard of any other grief
Nope,
theory?
that's the only thing I know, the 5 stages.
Let's go over it, though, for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to guess when that one was created?
Let's see.
The 50s.
I would say like around Freud.
Late 60s.
Oh,
Yeah, I was closest. Winner.
Yeah, but the thing about that, how much time has passed, right? Just like there's any field of study evolves over time. And we just seem to have gotten stuck in this one. So I think it's really interesting to know that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work, that the 5 stages, was not even originally about grief. It was about death and dying, right? It was about hospice patients and what happens when you come to terms with your own terminal diagnosis.
Oh.
Right. So you deny and then you get angry and then you bargain, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, doesn't it? And she never meant it to be prescriptive. She never meant it to be formulaic.
Yeah.
She never meant to insinuate that once you reach acceptance, which is the 5th stage, that you poof, you would never be sad again or never grieve again. But I think we like the idea of a formula. We like the idea of steps.
Yeah.
It
gives you this sense of control.
Yeah.
Like Joanne knows this about me. Like my life I lose my shiznit when I lose control of what's going on around me. And I know it's a typical traumatic response, but I can say like that's why I have peace of mind with the 5 stages of grief, because I quote unquote thought until we started this conversation today that I would know what to expect going into something like that because there's so many unknowns.
Yeah. Yeah. And wouldn't it be nice if it was just a formula that you could just follow and you could just trust that if you just went through the stages, then you would be fine.
Yeah.
You'd be able to predict it.
Yeah.
And what's such an unpredictable thing. Yeah. So when we have friends who have been through really, really tough situations, and I, for one, never know what to say. I feel like I'm going to step over into something that they don't want to talk about, or that's going to make them even more sad. I don't want to cause them any more pain than they're in so far. So because of all that, I usually end up saying nothing, which makes me feel kind of like a crappy friend as well. Like, why is it so awkward to talk about this?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to normalize that, right? It's not just you. Like I did the same thing. I look back and I'm like, oh, all the things I didn't say or could have said. So I think it's so awkward in part because we are socialized to believe that emotions are problems. Right? We are taught that when someone is sad, something is wrong and needs to be fixed.
Yes. Right. Okay. I 100% will I believe that because some of us, our role that we see ourselves that make us worthy is that we are, especially as moms, I think we feel like it's our job to emotionally make sure everybody is okay. Yeah. And so when, like,
it's
to Joanne's point, I have a friend. Yeah, like to Joanne's point, like my friends, I have a friend that I haven't had. We're like friends, but like I don't get to see her all the time. And her husband passed. I barely knew her husband, and I don't even know, like, just totally clueless on what to say and like how to even approach it. Besides, I'm so sorry for your loss. It sounds so empty.
Yeah. There's something called the writing reflex, like RIGHT, not like writing with a pen, but writing reflex, which is this idea. It was discovered in motivational interviewing that when we see someone who's in pain, we have a tendency to want to write that pain and fix it. But also, I think we simultaneously know that grief is appropriate, that sadness is appropriate. And so it's like a little bit of a conflict where we want to write it, but we also, we kind of know it should be there. And so we don't really know what to do, and just the whole thing feels awkward.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Yeah, right after this break, I want to get into how we can make it less awkward so that we can show up as the friends that we want to be and also know what to do with the situation. So we'll talk about that right after this.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're going to love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
I think I just won my taxes.
Yeah?
I just switched to H&R Block in about 1 minute. All I had to do was drag and drop last year's return into H&R Block, and bam, my information is automatically there.
So I don't have to go digging around for all my old papers to switch?
Nope.
Sounds like we just leveled up our tax game.
Switching to H&R Block is easy. Just drag and drop your last return. It's better with Block.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. If you're looking for flexible workouts, Peloton's got you covered. Summer runs or playoff season meditations. Whatever your vibe, Peloton has thousands of classes built to push you and has something there to adapt with you whether you need a challenge or rest. Peloton has everything you need whenever you need it. Find your push. Find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
So, Krista, how can we make this less awkward? Let's start first. What can we say to friends the first time that we see them after something horrible has happened in their lives?
So I think we want to just remember that instinct to write is natural, and we don't have to respond to it, right? Nothing has really gone wrong when someone is grieving. It is the natural response to a perceived loss. It is what humans are supposed to do. So if we can remember that, and we can remember that what grief really needs is a witness.
Okay.
We're not trying to make somebody feel better. When you think about things that people might have said to you when you're sad or something has happened to you and you're grieving. They're in a better place. Don't worry, you're young. Be grateful that you had them, right? We say everything happens for a reason. All of these cliched platitudes with the intention of, you don't feel good and I don't know how to feel good when you don't feel good. So I'm going to say something that hopefully makes you feel better. But how it's received is dismissive.
Oh.
Okay, right? When you're the one,
I can see how that is.
You don't really want somebody to talk you out of your pain. What you want is somebody who can be with you in your pain, who can witness it. And so anything that is witnessing but is not trying to take away or fix is usually better received. So this sucks. I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm here for you. This is really hard. I love them so much. But nothing that tries to take away the pain. Just something that says, I'm with you. I love you. Right? This is really hard, but not, don't count your blessing.
Oh, I hate those comments where they're like, oh, well, at least this didn't happen and at least this didn't happen.
Oh my God.
Just stay busy. At least you had children. At least you knew what true love felt like, right? There's always these, at least it could be worse, like anything like that. We're trying to change how someone feels, and we just want to witness it and be there with them.
And then because I would feel, I go into that situation, I'm there with a friend and I'm like, this sucks. This is horrible. Over time, I would feel that I mean, this is totally selfish and looking at myself in the situation. I think hopefully other people do this too, but you start to feel like a broken record, like you don't have anything to add to the conversation, or you don't have anything to do to support them.
I think a lot of people feel like that. I think you're right, Joanne. A lot of us feel like we only have so many lines that we can keep saying, and then we feel
kind
like
of redundant
we're
or kind of
uncreative, unsupportive. Yeah, like we're just being a waste of space by showing up and bringing it up.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting, though, that we feel this need to fill the space?
Mm-hmm.
Like the best times I had when I was like with friends after Hugo died were when people were just with me. Like they didn't insist on trying to say something to me. Like they would just, hey, do you want to go to the bookstore? And we'll just like go do something. And we don't have to fill the space necessarily or talk about it. I will say that it can be really hard as the person who is grieving when you believe that everyone else has forgotten, right, or moved on, and it's still so prevalent in your mind, but because people feel like awkward around you, or maybe they aren't thinking about it, they don't tend to bring up your loss. You're thinking about it all the time. And so it's actually quite validating when other people will bring it up, right? And to let them know that you're thinking of them, share a memory about that person, right? Not, hey, how you really doing? You know, not like creepy bringing it up, but just like not making sure that they know that they haven't been forgotten, right? It could just be a text here or there.
Okay, I have a question that I don't know if I'm going too much into this or not, but how can you tell or what can you do to help somebody that is maybe going through it a little bit longer than they than I see it now? That sounds bad, right?
It's so good that you said it, though.
So I'm going to say it, and you can correct
Yeah.
me when it seems like they're upset for something longer than they should be.
Yeah, right? So here's what I love about this. This is what so many of us are falling into, which is this idea that grief ends, right? Because we understand the 5 stages and because we think acceptance is some sort of place. So it's like golf. It's like 18 holes and we get to the end and we're done, right? And so we should move on or not be so sad. But the truth is that that's not how it works. We integrate the grief, right? But if grief is the natural human response to a perceived loss, and the perceived loss cannot be undone, then we will always experience grief, right? It can ebb and flow and evolve, and we can think about it differently over time, but there is no end. And so we have to stop measuring it that way, right? The secondary losses will just keep coming, right? So there's the primary loss, which is whoever died or whatever was lost, right?
Yeah.
And then
what are the secondary?
Right.
Yeah.
All the losses that wouldn't have happened if the primary loss hadn't happened. So for instance, I imagined my husband and I were going to go, we had just hiked a mountain. We were going to go hike the one next to it the next year, right? So not getting to do that was a secondary loss. Or him not being at, my daughter's graduation is a secondary loss. Things that you can't really predict because they haven't happened yet, but when they get there, you realize that the loss is still impacting you in a new way.
Oh, sucks.
I mean, it's just grief, right? So those things will keep coming. And if we can stop telling ourselves that we're not supposed to be having feelings about that, then it gets easier. Now, if somebody's quality of life is impacted to the point where they aren't functioning in the way that they want, right? Then we want them to know that there's help out there for that. We want them to know that this loss does not have to define or limit them in the long run such that they can never be who they want to be again, right? Post-traumatic growth is possible for everybody and support is available. But for most people, grieving is a very natural process and they might seek support, but humans are very resilient.
Yeah. What about for kids when a child who has lost someone? Is there anything different in how to approach them other than, being the witness to their pain, sharing good memories about the person that they lost?
I mean, I think it's also, good to keep in mind the age of the child, right? Because how you would approach, a 2-year-old is probably going to be different than how you would approach a teenager. But what I find is helpful is being honest but age appropriate, right? And so often people kind of want to use terms that are nebulous and like kind of kid glovey, which actually can end up backfiring because it can make the child less comfortable. So like saying, when people aren't honest about how a child's parent dies, right? Or they try to Well, they just, they fell asleep and they never woke up. Well, that's terrifying if you're a child.
Yeah.
Because, well, now is that going to happen to you? Is it going to happen to me? Right. Even death by suicide. How do we say it in a way that's age appropriate, but honest? And so those are some of the things that we want to be thinking about.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard issue. I remember that when my daughter was 4, her preschool teacher died while she was her preschool teacher, and talking about it with a 4-year-old, found that the best thing was to be honest and be like, she had a heart attack. But you're safe right now too. Your heart is good. Because that was one of the first things that she asked. She's like, well, are you and dad going to have a heart attack? Are you like, it was unexpected that a kid would respond that way. You've given us such great things to make it less awkward, Krista. First, just be the witness and empathize with your friend, your loved one, say you're there for them, and also just bring up good memories of the person and say that you're thinking of them. Both amazing. Right after this break, I want to talk about post-traumatic growth and like what that looks like, and how like we as people, like if we have experienced grief, or like we can help friends through it, or just understand it better. And we're going to talk about that right after this.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
It's time to rewrite the vacation rules. With Royal Caribbean, your family can look forward to just about anything. Break the thrill barrier, roaring down the tallest water slide in North America. Jump into breathtaking jungles and jaw-dropping coves. Vibe off the charts on our private island Perfect Day at Coco Cay. And end the day knowing things are just getting started. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
So, Krista, you are an expert in post-traumatic growth. And first, could you describe it a little bit? What does that mean?
Yeah. I remember hearing it the first time and I was like, what? What'd they say? Seems like everybody knows about post-traumatic stress disorder, but post-traumatic growth, maybe not so much. So post-traumatic growth was an idea that was coined in the mid-90s by a couple of researchers. At the time, we thought about trauma very differently than we do now. At the time, we thought about trauma as like big T, little t, very objective. Something would happen and that's traumatic, right? Now we know that trauma is very subjective, and what might be traumatic to me might not be traumatic to you. But what they were noticing is that they expected in their studies to see kind of 2 responses to trauma. This is really all that we knew about at the time. One was that the person's level of wellness or quality of life would dip, and then it would bounce back to where it was, right? The other one is that it would dip and it would never come back. Those are the only options, right? The best you could hope for is like to get somebody back to the level of wellness or life satisfaction that they had experienced before the trauma. But what they noticed is that there was this third group of people who were dipping down, but they weren't just bouncing back, they were bouncing forward. And it was actually because of what had happened, not in spite of it, but because of it. Because what we know now is that no matter what happens to us, even when we experience it as traumatic, we get to be the ones who decide what we want to make of it and who we want to be in the face of it, right? And what changes we might want to make given that we have been through that experience. And so it can be something that we may not be grateful that it happened, right? But it can kind of scratch the record and stop things and make you pause and go, oh, wait, okay. If life is this precious, am I living it the way that I want to be, right? Am I living in accordance with what I value? Because so many of us are just going through autopilot, right? And we're not really. And so post-traumatic growth, I don't want people to think of it as something that you should do. That's the last thing we need is another should. And I definitely don't see it as morally superior. But my thought is if a tornado comes and knocks down your house, you're going to have to rebuild, right? You could try to build something as close to what you had before. That'd be fine. Also, though, if you've lived there for a while and you've learned some things, maybe you didn't have a shelter in the basement. Now you want a shelter, right? You could update the design of your house and take into account all the things you have learned through the time that you have lived there and through losing it, and then, build accordingly. So is that house better? No. Does it mean that you are happy the tornado came? No. Right? But we always get to choose.
Okay. So I have to say, as someone who has been through a not so fun divorce, that kind of almost sounds like a lot. So I want to ask, do you feel like in your life particularly that you almost have the opportunity of looking back and being like, all right, I made it through my divorce, which was messy and icky and not where I wanted to be, and I didn't want that to happen, but I learned so much more. Do you feel like in your case, like you kind of leaned upon that experience to kind of help you with this one, or is it completely different? I mean, because honestly, your story alone, I can't, my brain is still coming out of my ears from it.
I mean, yeah, I think everything you go through, right? You learn lessons and you figure out who you want to be next and what you want to do next. So I for sure leveraged the challenge that was my divorce. I think also interestingly, it had really, this sounds so odd to say, but one of my sorority sisters died when she was 25 and she was killed, and the people who killed her on death row. And so it's a whole ugly thing. But we created a camp program for kids who are blind or visually impaired in her name. And that happened to be the camp that Hugo and I were coming back from when the accident happened. And I know, right? What are the odds? But I kind of, in the back of my mind, I knew what good we had made come out of Heather's death. And so I already had the idea that, not that you have to make good things come out. You don't. Things can just be bad and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But I had this idea, because I had already been through something kind of like it, that this could be that too in some ways. Not that I wanted it to happen or would ever be grateful that it did. But I really, that was oddly helpful.
Yeah. I could see that for sure, right? Because you're like, I had a really bad experience. It kind of almost goes along with that saying that we have of like, oh, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. It's kind of like, all right, there had to be a reason for it, and I'm going to find that reason, and that's going to help.
Yeah, it was more like, I'm going to show up for myself in this. I'm going to make some good come out of this.
That's a good one, because the whole saying, like, there must be a reason things happen. It's so horrible to have that said to you when you have a horrible thing happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more like, okay, universe, you can knock me down.
Yeah.
But I can still get up. It was like anytime I think you look back and you see you've already done that to some extent, and you can leverage that.
Yeah. The situation empowered you and gave you the confidence that you could handle this horrible event, because you handled it
while also being in a complete puddle and completely numb. And like, I don't want to make it sound glamorous. It was not glamorous. It was terrible.
No,
I don't think anybody heard your story and thought you were being glamorous. It's all good.
You're good.
It's all good. We definitely feel like
I
you
didn't
were
just like put on a cape and be like,
I know, right?
Let's go.
I definitely feel like you're sharing your experience with us, because so many of us have run into this. So either, like, again, it's either been like a friend that has lost. Well, no, gosh. Okay. So I'm probably doing all the wrong things right now, because I'm getting ready to say, like, there's a difference when you lose a spouse. And then I'm like, whoa, wait. But I mean, I guess like every death, not, I guess. Golly jeepers, people. If you could see the hole, I'm 10 feet looking up just to see the light. I'm so deep in the hole right now.
What you're doing right now, though, is I think what a lot of people think, like, this is the awkwardness that comes around death, like not knowing what to say, feeling like you
start
really
to say
get
one
into
thing
it,
and then you stop. Yeah.
And dig the hole.
Yeah. And then it can really be problematic when it's your experience too, because then you're telling yourself, oh, well, their loss is worse than mine. Right. You're like, you can like start shitting on yourself. Well, at least I should be grateful because they had it so much worse than I did. Instead of being like, no, all grief is hard.
Yeah.
Right. It's different for every person. It's not formulaic. my pain sees your pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. And we're like in this together kind of experience, even though we've had different experiences.
Yes. Krista, you've given us so much great information about grief, and especially like steps that we could take with friends to make it all less awkward. Switching subjects just a little bit, what is exciting that's going on for you in your life? What are you looking forward to?
Well, my 21-year-old is about to come home from Buenos Aires. She's been there for a semester. I can't keep her in the city. She's like in Costa Rica for a while and then in Spain studying for a while. And now she's in Buenos Aires. So she's coming back. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I had that kind of spirit of, I'm just going to try it.
I went to school like 5 miles from my house. So no, she's a different breed of cat.
I could be adventurous with some things in life, but just saying, let's just go for it. Joanne knows that is like a terrifying statement to me.
See, I would do it. I'd do it all the time. I would do it.
You would, and you would be dragging my ass behind you the whole time too.
Well,
she'd be like, come on, come on, Bree, rip off the Band-Aid. You can do it. Let's go.
Even with
That's
travel, Krista, even with travel, there's this little like thing on Instagram that both me and our friend Shayna sent Bree. And it was like, there's the friend who plans all the travel. And then there's the friend who just tags along and like wants to know what we're doing. And it's like this friend
and Bree's the tag along.
Yes,
I am.
Yes,
I am. You just like I just get told like we're picking you up at this time and this is our gate. And okay, all right, cool. That's good.
It's how it goes.
Hey, that's great. Let other people do the work. Show up.
I think that's what she does.
I love it. I love it. I get to do things that I would never do.
You have some of the birth order stuff going for you too, with the baby and the family. And I'm an older child, and Shayna's an older child.
I was gonna say my two travel friends are firstborns, so I just get to like live up the baby.
Yes. Well, Krista, thank you so much for joining us and giving us all this great information. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for being willing.
So talking to Krista is great. I mean, like I'll say before we got on this interview, I'm like, Bree, I don't know how to handle this interview. I'm uncomfortable talking about grief. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. It scared me that her husband died because I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? And I want to say that's a normal human reaction. Two things. So that's why I acknowledge it publicly right now. So if you're listening, just know, like, acknowledge publicly. And she also had some really great tips. I felt like her tips helped me through that interview. So you saw in real time how it could take the awkwardness away.
It is something of a magic trick I almost see with validating. And it's funny. I'm going to tell you from my perspective of being someone who has two people in her life who are very good at validating feelings. I have you and I have my husband. You guys are very good at validating feelings. And I, on the other hand, am very uncomfortable with hard feelings. You know that. Like, we'll be doing a coaching session and someone starts crying and I'm like, virtual hugs. I don't know what to do. And then you can like work with that. So I think that it just kind of brought to the forefront what I already knew in the back of my head, but is never my natural response. I don't have to fix it. I just have to validate it. And I know how good it feels to be like, have someone be like, I'm not trying to fix it. I'll sit here in the crap with you.
Yeah, because it's hard too. Like if someone tries to fix it and you don't like their solution, like because you're not even looking for a solution. You're just like, everything sucks right now. And your brain isn't even ready to look at possible solutions.
Well, and I think that in the terms of grief, the solution you want is the only solution you can't have.
Just have the person back.
Yeah, 99% of the time. The solution that you really, really deeply want is for the person that you love to be here. And
I'm like, I was like 99% of the time, in that off chance that they're really alive, like they are. What is that 1%? I want to know.
It's the 1% that have faked their death to leave an abusive relationship. I'm not basing this at all on the stranger or the enemy in my bed or whatever that was. That
oh my gosh,
Julia Roberts.
Outer Banks, the TV show, everybody comes back from the dead. Everybody does. Like, there's always, it's like, oh, you're not really dead. Oh, now are you dead? Okay, you're dead.
I know, right? So yeah. So I really loved having Krista come, especially because like we had a really, I had a friend that I've known in multiple different facets whose husband unexpectedly died. And I think it's those unexpected ones that scare the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Because
you
just realize, you realize that in a second, everything can change. And I think that Krista brought up a really good point of, is this how I want to live my life? Like with the time that I have and just sitting there and being there, like, sometimes that's just what we need.
Sometimes people just need to be understood. That's all.
Yeah.
It's like what we base all of our coaching on too, is whenever I'm coaching someone, whenever I'm giving advice on parenting, it always goes back to that same thing. You just need to help people feel understood. And you'll notice that your life gets so much easier. Your relationship gets so much easier, so much more productive, so much like more caring, and you feel safe in it. If you could just make them feel understood. That's it.
Yeah. And if you felt like this episode was helpful, can you do us a favor and will you share this episode? Like, let's all take a little pinky promise commitment right now. We are going to share this episode with at least 3 of our friends. We're going to text it on over right now. Come on, pull out your phone. You can do it. We're going to open up
Bree really wants you to share. Do it for free.
Really wants you to share.
Do it for free. And until next time, remember, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.
If you'd like to support the show further, you can share episodes with your loved ones, leave a positive review, or follow us on social media at No Guilt Mom. You could also show your love by visiting our amazing podcast sponsors. We have a link in the show notes.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.